I'm Rod from Rod Rides and Wrenches. If this is your first time here, thanks for watching and tuning in. I hope you'll take the time to subscribe and check out the rest of the videos on the channel. So one of the bikes I get the most questions about is my 2012 GoldWing that I traded my ST1300 for last year. If you remember, this bike needed a little bit of work. Now I asked you to help me out with figuring out what fairings I should use, aftermarket or OEM. In the end, there was just way too many unique parts that needed replacement. And when I say this, I mean the black plastic parts that make up the dash and the liners and the rest of the trim. So rather than deal with a possible color match issue, I just bit the bullet and bought all brand new parts from Honda. Now, none of this was straightforward, as I had to source parts not just from the United States and Canada, but even as far as the UK and Japan. I even got arrested bringing some American parts back across the border into Canada and had to pay another $2,000 in fines and taxes.
I'm the bad guy. Duh.
So a big shout out to our Canadian federal government for protecting our border and keeping us safe from parts terrorists just like me. So here it is, a year later, and the GoldWing is back on the road. Now everything else on the bike went together pretty straightforward, since these were all brand new pieces, with one exception, and that's this front piece along the bike that Honda calls the windshield garnish. I actually bought that secondhand from a fellow in the UK. Now this piece actually sold for $400 US, and I got this one out of the UK for around $150 Canadian. Now, buying other parts used online was extremely difficult for this bike. It seems anything that I did need was already damaged, and I just couldn't see paying half as much as a new piece to even 3/4 the price of a brand new piece to have it sent to a body shop, have it painted, repaired, possibly have a color match issue. It just didn't make any sense, and it was absolutely crazy to look at used parts when you could still acquire the brand new parts from Honda. Now the rest of the bike went back together pretty straightforward, and basically rather than do a video of me installing new parts, I decided to kind of sum things up here at the end. But enough of this for now. As you can see, we're up near Whistler Olympic Park in the Callahan Valley. Behind me is Rainbow Mountain, and over there is Brandywine Mountain. And you can probably figure out by the snow around, it's still pretty fucking cold up here. So we're gonna ride down to the coast, and that should be a few degrees warmer.
The GoldWing for me is one of those bikes that's single purpose minded. It has an incredible engine that just pulls like a diesel truck. You're well protected and comforted by heated seats, grips, a big windscreen, and fairings. Now check out these little vents that direct heat from the exhaust header over your boots to keep your tootsies warm. Overkill? Not today, my friend.
On the positives, we've got a fantastic navigation system that in the display adjusts for different lighting. And of course, as you ride, That's a big deal. You want to be able to have a display that's not going to be all washed out when the sun hits it, or when you get into a shaded part, it's so bright that it's blinding you.
Being a 2012 wing though, the system takes 30 seconds to boot up after you started your bike, and if you start riding before you try to activate the navigation, it won't work. Apparently, this is for safety reasons. Now, there's no Bluetooth connectivity. For years, Honda offered a wired intercom system for the wing, but that, like the CB radio add-on, has rightfully faded into the dark and dingy corners of your Honda dealer's discount bin.
I'm going to say that one of the things that I sure liked when we were up in the colder area was this big windshield and big fairing, and, you know, all of the cold wind was blocked. Now, as we get down closer to the coastline, the temperature has certainly come up, and we don't have a whole lot of wind circulation or air circulation. And the windshield down in the lowest position, I still don't feel I'm getting enough air.
Finishing up the bike back in the garage, I was fortunate to have the folks at Autotop Technology send me an OBDPROG Moto 100. The model I received had all the OBD connection harnesses for Yamaha, Harley-Davidson, Polaris Indian, BRP, and Honda. I was able to scan the codes in my GoldWing and found that surprisingly there was only one stored code from the intake air temperature sensor. Now this was likely thrown when I started the bike without the sensor being hooked up last year. I easily cleared the code and didn't have it come back, so I'm confident there's no issues. The OBDPROG Moto 100 is a great tool if you like to do your own diagnostics. Here you can see how it displays the bike's vital statistics, stores them for recall at a later date, and allows you to make sure everything is working properly. In addition to clearing the airbox sensor code, I ran through some additional checks on the bike, including the kickstand switch, pair system, plus a few others just to make sure everything was working to specification. You can pick one of these tools up for your own garage since it has multiple bike functions, works with not just the engine control system but the ABS and stability control, and it'll pay for itself if you ever have to make more than one trip to your dealer for an out-of-warranty engine check issue. I'd recommend getting the European version though, which comes with connectors for Triumph, Ducati, and BMW, as well as Honda and Yamaha. The folks at Autotop Technology sent me the North American version of the Moto 100, which works with Harley, Polaris Indian, and BRP. Now, I don't often work on these machines anymore, so the European version would have been the one that suited me the best, but depending on what bikes you want to service, you can look through these options. There is a link in the description where you can check out this very cool tool. The bike is extremely stable in a straight line as fast as you want to go. It's relatively easy to maneuver at low speeds since the weight of the bike is so low. The seat height is another pleasant surprise for someone like me, as my inseam does have its shortcomings. It isn't all glitter though, especially on the roads that I favor. You will run out of lean angle even at low speeds if the corner is a little anti-camber. You're locked into this seating position and can't easily throw the bike into corners like these. You can move your head to the outside of the windscreen, and it does help you hold the line through a corner if moving quickly. If you're having trouble holding a straight line in the corner at speed on a wing, I highly suggest you try moving your head closer to the handlebar on the inside of the corner like I'm doing here. One of the biggest disappointments in the bike, for me anyway, is that I don't find the ride that comfortable. I could adjust the electronic rear preload to different settings, but I can't do this while the bike is running down the highway. A significant difference if you're comparing this bike to, say, the ESA system on a BMW GTL 1600 or any other motorcycle with electrically adjustable suspension made in this century. The front suspension doesn't have any exterior adjustment, nor is it affected by the rear electric preload. You'll remember I took these forks out of the bike to inspect them and change the fluid. The GL1800 has just under 5 inches of front suspension travel, and just taking the bike off the center stand uses up close to 3 of these inches. The bike weighs close to 1,000 pounds and is slightly over 1,000 pounds with me on it. Well, maybe more than just slightly. From the factory, the GL1800 has a spring rate in the front forks of just 0.7 kilograms per millimeter. This is the equivalent spring rate that you would find in something like a CB300, which weighs 600 pounds less than the GoldWing. Without a manual or electronic preload adjustment in the forks, GoldWing riders that own a 2001 through 2017 often complain about the jolt the bike experiences going over bumps. At times, I would even say the bike is downright uncomfortable over bumps at any speed. Now, I'm not sure why Honda didn't attempt to fix this until 2018 when they changed the front suspension entirely to a car-like double wishbone style, which is the way BMW's been doing front suspension on their motorcycles since, well, forever. For the 2001 to 2017 GoldWing, Honda uses an anti-dive mechanism in the left fork, which is a band-aid for the lack of proper spring rates and dampening, plus a soft triple tree clamp that's known to flex. The anti-dive mechanism is a carryover from the 1980s, and I first saw this system on a CB750 Nighthawk I once owned. The system hydraulically locks the left fork in the GoldWing, which has some significant impact on the stability of the bike if you're in a panic stop situation and the bike is not completely vertical. The good news on this 2012 model is that it's the first of the era to receive an upgraded, stiffer triple tree clamp, but there are mixed reviews on its effectiveness. Fortunately, there are a number of companies that make springs and dampeners for this bike that can fix this to a degree. I found a pretty good video series from Traxxion Dynamics that you can find a link to in the description of this video that goes through GoldWing suspension and what you can do about it.
I've also found sometimes with the GoldWing is that a lot of riders don't wave at you for some reason. I don't know what that's about. Wave at this guy and nothing. Okay, all right. Here's two more. We'll try it here. Wave and nothing. Nope. It's a GoldWing thing, I guess.
Then there's the stereo. Now, you apparently can't have enough buttons to operate this stereo, and I'm not sure who even listens to their motorcycle's external stereo anymore. With the improvements in helmet intercom sound systems nowadays, this is not a cool look, and no one else really wants to hear your music in traffic. But if you are the kind of rider that wants to let your rebel yell in public,
with a rebel yell, she cried
the sound quality from the Honda audio system is excellent, and I think it's even better than the one on the Harley Ultra or Indian Roadmaster. There are still a couple of niggly things that I need to finish up on this bike. If you remember, the TPMS module was cracked, and getting a replacement module from Honda was not possible as they were not available in North America, Europe, or Japan. I did find a used one on eBay and bought a VT1500 TPM sensor activation tool to reprogram the wheel sensors. Now, I did get the front sensor to register on the bike, but the rear one was non-responsive. I'm confident the battery in the sensor has died, and I'm not sure how badly I want to remove the tire from the rim to replace the TPMS when the tire's still decent. Maybe this is a job best done when the tires need replacement. I also have an issue with the fuel level gauge. Filled up, the gauge reads 3/4 full. Doing some online research, I found this is not an uncommon issue for a GL1800 since it uses 2 sending units in the tank. This one at the front is registering the upper part of the tank, but if the float level on the lower sending unit attached to the fuel pump is not functioning, you will wind up with an improper reading throughout the scale of the tank. This lower float is what I'm going to have to fiddle with to get the fuel gauge close. Now, watch for those details a little later on.
So we're back down off the mountain, and behind me is Darrell Bay, which is kind of at the headwater for how it sounds. This GoldWing is completed, and I have to say, although it makes a statement in its presence and is luxurious in its appointments, it's probably not a bike I can see myself using long term. I just don't feel as connected to the road on this bike as I do on my other motorcycles. Now, I know there's a lot of things that GoldWing riders can do to help with this, but now that this bike is set back to stock, I'm just gonna let somebody else enjoy this ride. And whatever you ride, be sure to ride it safe.
Recording. Let's hit the horn.
Man, it's windy.
The electronic cruise control on the bike is also a nice feature. I mean, not that I get to use it a whole lot up here, but when I do use it, turn it on, And nope, that's reverse. There we go. There's the cruise. Okay. Turn the cruise on. Set my speed here. There we go. And no, it didn't work. Okay. Oh, pushing the wrong button. Here we go. Too many buttons on this bike. I need to find some better light. Now, if you're riding with me and you take a look around, if this bridge looks familiar, you've seen it in probably the last 10 action movies you've watched.
Wait! You may be wondering why the red suit. Well, that's so bad guys can't see me bleed. This guy's got the right idea. He wore the brown pants.